How's it going, everybody? My name is Shady's on Broadway. Today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about Black Panther in the Marvel Dice Throne set. He is a complexity level 2, so today I just wanted to go over a bit about what he does, who the character is, what he offers to the game, and what makes him unique. Now, jumping into the character itself, I've played him maybe around 50 or more times. I'd have to say at least 50 times, but probably my favorite within the Marvel cast. I do really like Loki, but overall, Panther's a great contender. If you take a look at here at the leaflet on the back of the board, I can show that here to the camera. Pretty much, he is a complexity level 2. So what I'd recommend is if you guys are jumping into the game for the first time, if you haven't heard of Dice Throne, trying to learn what it is, he's a great character to actually learn the game, being 2 out of 6. What makes this character cool and why do I like them? So first of all, they only have 2 tokens. Now for those that have been playing Dice Throne for a while, a character that also has 2 tokens would be the Barbarian. And I'd say they're pretty similar in terms of complexity level. So if you take a look, he has kinetic energy. So when you get 8 of these kinetic energy, or when you acquire your stack limit, you're actually going to be exploding, doing 5 undefendable as an isolated source of damage, while also getting 2 CP and 2 cards. Additionally, for every 2 that you have, you're actually going to be getting a +1 attack bonus to every attack that you propose. Now, as soon as you hit stack limit, so whether that may be during the offensive roll phase, or if somebody's attacking you, or even during your upkeep, you're going to be doing a burst effect, which happens immediately as an instant. I mean, how do you get kinetic energy, right? So Black Panther here has a passive. It's called Energy Absorption. Now what this one does is every time you're actually going to be taking a damage, you're going to be getting that source of kinetic energy. Now whether that's going to be through upkeep, let's say you have 3 poisons and a couple bleeds on you, right? You're only going to be getting a maximum of 1 kinetic during this upkeep phase. The easy way, or at least the way I like to describe it, is for your kinetic energy, you're going to be getting a maximum of 1 during your upkeep, as many as you can during your main phase, because there are certain cards that let you additional kinetic during your main phase, as many as you can during your offensive roll phase, and any time that you're attacked, whether that may be defendable damage toward you and you get to roll your defense, or undefendable damage toward you. If your opponent is attacking you, you're going to be getting a kinetic energy. If they're doing isolated sources of damage, for example, Thor's Mjolnir, you're going to be also getting a kinetic off of that. Now, given that he's going to be taking a lot of hits, you figured he'd have some kind of control or utility. He doesn't really have any control in his kit. He does have this item here called Vibranium Suit. Now, this is acquired through his Heart-Shaped Herb ability, his mini ult, and his regular ult, although there is a card that allows him to get the suit naturally. You can use this as a source to block any kind of damage up to 3. Now, you do need to be careful, though, that you're not blocking all of the damage, because if you're blocking everything, you won't be able to get a kinetic off of it. You need to be successfully taking at least 1 damage in order to get that kinetic bonus. Sometimes it's better to actually take the attack and not necessarily use the suit. Now, if we take a look here, energy absorption, you do need to get your kinetic energy stack of 8. If you look at the energy absorption passive here, with this passive ability, you actually only need to get 7 out of 8. Now, because this is free and can be played during your main phase, an actual idea that you can do is right after you attack somebody, if you're on 7 out of your 8 kinetic energy, you don't want to be passing your turn. If we take a look at here at the back of the leaflet, I just wanted to go over some of the general aspects of the character. If we jump to the FAQ, a couple of frequently asked questions, you do get that bonus right away when you guys are going to be getting that attack bonus from your kinetic energy. When you're bursting, the damage can be prevented or avoided, but they cannot activate a defensive ability. So it's very important that you're not activating a defense in response to the kinetic burst, because it's not considered an attack. It's considered basically a damage source from a token. So now if we keep going down here, the passive grants you energy from all types except ultimates. If your health goes to 0, if Black Panther is killed, but he was going to try to burst, you wouldn't be able to burst. You have to survive the attack in order to perform the burst effect against the opponent. Now, additionally, your Vibranium Suit, I believe I already mentioned, but you can play this in response to any form of damage outside of an ultimate. If you take a look here at the die components, it is 1 through 3 for Slash, 4 through 5 for Vibranium, and 6 for Panther, which actually makes his structure very easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, if you take a look at his abilities, We have a couple abilities here. We have Vibranium Claws, but they're generally not what you want to be chasing majority of the time. It is decent damage, but it's not really going to be contributing a whole lot to your win. Moving over to Stealth Strike, I really recommend that you guys don't activate Stealth Strike if you have the chance not to. The really only reason you should go for this is if you're trying to basically carry out a win when things are very close, but you're trying to prevent somebody from defending. But in general, Stealth Strike is not very effective as well. Heart-Shaped Herb, one of my favorite abilities. You don't want to be forgetting about this one. So, of course, it doesn't do any actual damage, but it is 3 kinetic energy with a Vibranium suit, and it is very easy to roll. So this is kind of a safe fallback. You can activate this kind of when you want to. Generally depends on the situation, but of course, if you need kinetic, this is probably the easiest way to guarantee yourself. Moving on to Meteororic Punch, he has a small and large straight. Very important to keep in mind that these are locked to the same ability, so it's going to be one or the other, but for all intents and purposes, if you're playing against Loki with a Spellbound effect, that does actually lock both abilities there. Looking at Triple Threat's actually going to be his main attacking ability if you get that upgrade out, which I'm going to be talking about shortly. Ancestral Power, again, you really don't want to be using your mini ultimate as Black Panther. This is kind of like a pretty bad scenario if you are using that mini ultimate. Because it is Vibranium suit, but it is undefendable damage, and it's only 4 at that. There's a lot of characters that have a better mini ultimate. His defense is also pretty bad. You're basically rolling 3 dice, and on a claw, you swing for 1 back. So you have no damage mitigation whatsoever outside of your Vibranium suit. Let's talk about the ultimate. So Wakanda Forever, pretty decent ultimate. You're going to be getting 3 kinetic, 11 ultimate damage, of course, and Vibranium suit, which can be used as kind of a momentum swinger. So let's go ahead and take a look. I'm going to go ahead and separate his unique cards here. Before we jump into his unique cards, I actually do want to talk about these cards here, the dice modifiers. So with these cards, these are the 4 cards that every hero has in their deck. They're a part of the 18 default cards with every individual dice thrown hero. Now, these 4 cards, what I will mention is you definitely want to be using these cards defensively and not offensively. The reason why you want to be doing this is because as Black Panther, your role objectives are significantly easier than almost every other character in the game. Now, Helping Hand, you're always going to be using defensively anyway. I strongly recommend that you guys use these cards on defense rather than offense. However, of course, if you are able to swing that ultimate, then of course I say go for it. What status effects? Keep in mind that you always need to play around this as Black Panther. This card is the absolute bane to your existence. If this is played against you at the wrong opportunity, you're going to be set back tremendously. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at some of his fun cards. So let's talk about the non-upgrade cards first. We have 2 cards that are instants. Now, because these are instants, you can interrupt an opponent's turn. Discard 2 kinetic energy to gain Vibranium suit. So for those that are familiar with this card, Not This Time, this is essentially a mini Not This Time that you can use as an instant effect. Now with this card, you're going to be able to discard 2 kinetic energy, and it is a free cost card here, 0 CP. Now if you take a look at the third, these are basically all of the damage mitigation that Black Panther has. Of course, Not This Time being in every character's deck, but with these 3 cards here, Vibin is 1 CP and allows you to throw away your suit to prevent 6 damage rather than the original 3, so you can kind of generate a combination with these cards if you see the opportune moment. Also, another thing you can do with Yabambe is, let's say that you're about to burst, but you don't actually want to. You can play this card to lower your stack limit in order to get that +1 damage from the kinetic energy, which I find to be very important because there are times where you just want to have enough kinetic energy to get that +1 damage bonus. So these are all pretty cool cards that you need to watch out for playing against Black Panther and also playing with Black Panther. Moving on to some of the other unique cards that Black Panther has to offer, he has Warrior of Wakanda. So this card is 2 CP. What it actually does is it makes any attack you do undefendable. Now again, you want to be careful with this card because what this card actually does is makes your attack undefendable, but depending on the character that you're playing against, you actually don't want to be doing undefendable sometimes because you do want to be getting swung back for damage in order to get more kinetic. So use that card as you see fit. A card that I like to combo with that one though is Strength of Will. Now if we take a look at this card, it is 1 CP attack modifier, so you basically play this card when you're doing a offensive ability that does damage. And with this one, you'd roll 5 dice and add 1 per claw. And because your claws are very easy to roll, this is actually a very easy way for you to deal a lot of damage. Moving on to the 2 unique main phase cards here that Black Panther has to offer. I like both of these quite a bit. So with Stop at Nothing, generally you don't want to be discarding kinetic energy. But again, if you feel like you need to in order to stay below that burst effect until their opportune moment, you can get 3 CP for it. And depending on what cards you draw, there might be a moment where you actually need the CP. Now, personally, as somebody who's played Black Panther quite a bit, I don't notice that I need CP often, but this is still nonetheless a decent way to get CP when I need it. One of his better cards here is going to be Energize. Now with this card, you pay a CP during your main phase and roll a die and gain half of it as kinetic energy. The reason why this is going to be pretty good is if you get this card, you can actually burst during your second main phase or even during your first main phase. Now the reason why you'd want to be doing it during your first main phase is, let's say you haven't gone through all your dice mod cards yet and you need just enough to either try to defend against another attack or to potentially get that CP and card draw to perform an ultimate for the final blow. Definitely one of the better cards in his deck. Now moving on to the upgrades. So basically Black Panther has, 8 upgrades, which I'm going to be showing you guys what I think, starting with the ones that I don't feel like are very good. Let's go ahead and start with Stealth Strike. So for 1 CP, you add 1 undefendable damage to that base total of your Stealth Strike ability. Now, this generally is never going to be really useful because if you're going to be using this ability often, you're definitely going to be losing the game. It's not enough consistent damage. It is okay if you need to secure a kill, but otherwise I generally do not recommend going for Stealth Strike as an upgrade. Moving on here to Bashenga's Honor, going to be the defensive upgrade for Black Panther. This only adds a die to the actual ability here, and when you add that die, you're basically only going to be maybe adding 1 damage. Again, this card is not really worth it majority of the time. If you can get it during the early game, I say sure, it potentially could be worth it, but majority of the time, I'd kind of opt against it. We have Ancestral Power. Now, this is his mini ult upgrade, which also unlocks the micro ult upgrade. This does give you an option to prevent whiffing with 3 6s for 2 CP, but again, the cost for it is not really that worth it. And the last upgrade I feel is kind of is going to be his large and small straight. So for 2 CP, you do power up each of your straights by 1 damage, which isn't bad, but again, it's just a single damage. So it depends on the context of the situation with the cards you have in hand versus your CP count. Now I'm going to talk about the 4 upgrades that I feel like he has that are pretty decent. Again, he has a total of 8. So here we have these 4. So first of all, going to Vibranium Claws. Now this one is pretty arguable, right? Because it is just a basic attack upgrade for 1 CP, but it does give you that 3 of a kind gain kinetic bonus. Let's say you have 5 kinetic energy, or this would allow you to get that additional kinetic energy to either add that damage or get that burst at the opportune moment, and it is only 3 of a kind. So somewhat reliable if you need it. I definitely wouldn't trash it right away, something to consider. Of course, Energy Absorption, we've already briefly talked about this card, but it is very important as a passive upgrade as Black Panther that you play this when you feel like you are ready. So with this card, it is completely free. You can drop it during your main phase or your second main phase, which I find that you definitely could hold this card until you're ready to perform that burst. And the way you play this, there's so many ways you can do it. It just depends on the moment that you need it. Now, the 2 most important upgrades here that I want to talk about for Black Panther, number 1 is going to be Heart Shape Herb. Now, you might be thinking, well, for a 2 CP cost, that seems kind of expensive. Now, if you look at here, you only need the same amount of ability of rolls, which are going to be 3 4s or 3 5s. And if you take a look here, this changes. So if you look at the side-by-side, this changes from gain Vibranium Suit and 3 kinetic energy to gain 1 Vibranium per symbol, which means that if you roll 5 5s, 5 4s, or any combination of the 2 numbers, you can get a maximum here of 5 kinetic energy, which is really freaking good because with that Vibranium Suit, this allows you to burst quite a bit more often. Generally, you want to be chasing this if you're farther behind and you need a chance to catch up, but I always recommend playing this card because of how more often you're going to be getting those burst effects. Another tremendously good upgrade card here is Triple Threat. Now, if you compare the 2 between Triple Threat, all this does is let you roll an additional die. But the reason why this is going to be important is that if you look here, it's going to be 6 damage roll 2 versus 6 damage roll 3. Now, as always, sticking with the actual original card as well, if you take a look here at Triple Threat, it is 6 damage and roll 3 dice with the upgrade, but there's only a multiplier on the claw, which means that if you get 3 Vibraniums, you actually don't get 3 of that effect because it says on. So very important that when Dice Throne says on and not per or X as a multiplier, you don't get all of this as a bonus. Now it is important to keep in mind, like let's say for example, I have 6 damage, no kinetic on me right now, but let's say I roll 2 claws and 1, 4, 5 with this ability. I would get that kinetic bonus immediately, so that actually means that my damage would be 9, assuming I have no kinetic energy on my board. So ideally with this card, you'd want to be rolling a 4, a 6, and a claw. Just basically you don't want to be rolling multiple 6s or multiple 4s and 5s. One of the few situations where you don't want to be doing that. Finally, I think we can go ahead and talk about the actual character's role objectives in and of itself. So I'm going to go ahead and throw my dice, right? So let's say this is my first roll. So pretty decent start here. We have a small straight. Now, depending on what our card situation is, I might say, let's pick this up and go again, or I might just say, let's keep it. Now, I want to show you guys something pretty cool. So if you keep this 3, 4, and the 6, and remove the 1 and the 2, I want to show you guys what your options actually are. Keeping these 3 die and rolling the other 2, you still have an opportunity to get a small straight, large straight, triple threat, stealth strike, heart-shaped herb, and vibranium claws. So by keeping these 3 die symbols, you actually have a lot of things that you can activate. Generally, again, you don't want to be chasing ancestral power until you're actually ready to commit to the ultimate or mini ultimate, which you do want to have a lot of cards in CP to back up that play for. So that's just something interesting. And even if you want to just keep the 6, right? Let's say you just keep the 6. Look at the abilities you can still activate by just keeping that singular 6. So you can activate Heart-Shaped Herb, Stealth Strike, Vibranium Claws, Triple Threat, Ancestral Power Ultimate, and Meteororic Punch, which is your small and large, just by keeping 1/6. This is one of the very few characters that have a lot of opportunity to activate a lot of offensive role phase abilities, so there's not really going to be a time where you're going to be whiffing completely with the character. So you generally don't want to be throwing out 6s willy-nilly because there's not a whole lot of things this character can do with 6s that is actually effective. It's one of the few characters where undefendable may not actually mean that it's a great thing to do. But overall, I find this character to be a lot of fun, and if you guys have been playing the character, just let me know what you guys think down below. Additionally, I would like to mention that if you guys are interested in joining the Freehawks community, we also do play physical and tabletop simulator games daily. We're actually the most active community for that right now through Discord. If you guys are interested, there is going to be a link down in the description down below. But as always, if you guys enjoyed this video, please do let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, take care and stay safe.